last few months, employers have reported a spike in the amount of internal complaints being made in their organisations. Bullying, harassment and dissatisfaction with co-workers are some of the major areas. To take us through it, Joydeep Kaur from People and Cultures joins us now live. Joydeep, great to have you on the programme this morning. So just tell us a bit more about why you think that we have seen this spike in complaints.
It is very interesting. I think it's no coincidence that this spike in complaints, which is very real, and I'd say you're quantifying it as against probably the number of complaints organisations were dealing with pre-pandemic, you're probably seeing an increase to the tune of 25 to 35%, which is a very significant number. As to why that's happening, I also think that a big part of it is a strong level of resentment that a number of employees are feeling, not necessarily directed at anything in particular that their employers are doing, but just that frustration that people are feeling, whether it's because of uncertainty as to what's happening, as to where they will work, whether they're going to work from home or come back to the office, and maybe some issues arising from that, and just the fact that people are, while still being able to resume a lot of normality in their lives, not able to do a lot of things, particularly when it comes to overseas travel, and things that they might have been happy to let go or not make an issue in relation to previously. What we're seeing is that there's a far greater willingness and appetite for formalising complaints at the moment, as opposed to what was the case previously.
Which particular areas of complaints seem to be increasing at the moment? I mean, we mentioned there at the top, bullying, harassment and the like. You would have thought that harassment would no longer, well, certainly wouldn't be such an issue these days because of the focus that we've had on that.
Well, I think it's a very good, interesting observation. Sexual harassment complaints are also on the rise, and what I'd say is interesting about that is it's not necessarily because there is more inappropriate behaviours occurring, but because of that external narrative which is placing this front and centre, and has been the case pretty much for the last few years since the onset of the Me Too movement. There's a lot of behaviours which are at a far lower grade of offensiveness, objectively assessed, that are now the subject of complaint. So there has been an increase in that particular area, notwithstanding that you would think that that would be an area where there would be less. What I'd also say about workplace bullying complaints is that the breadth of matters that are the subject of workplace bullying complaints now is increasing significantly. We are finding that employees are making complaints about bullying, not just in the context of those obvious examples of bullying, or even what has been quite a big part of bullying complaints over the years, which is someone not liking feedback from a supervisor or a manager if perhaps there are issues around their performance being addressed. We're seeing bullying complaints now being brought where a person is unhappy with something that a co-worker is doing, the fact that they don't like being spoken to in a particular way, the fact that they might be sensing that there is some kind of favouritism going on. Quite a wide range of behaviours now are the subject of bullying complaints. And the third thing I'd say about the areas is that probably the most significant development that we've observed in the last few months has been the heightened use of whistleblowing infrastructure, hotlines where anonymity can be preserved in relation to the person making a complaint, being used to raise issues that were probably not contemplated within the context of the introduction of whistleblower legislation, which was, I think, probably best summarised as to be dealing with issues of fraud and corruption and whatever else. Those hotlines and those facilities are now being used to ventilate interpersonal grievances, and organisations have no choice in the majority of instances but to invest a lot of time, resources and money in conducting investigations.
Yeah, Joydeep, so you've highlighted there, obviously there's greater awareness of that harassment going on in the workplace, greater reporting or an increased reporting of those incidents, but as perhaps you've highlighted there, some of them may be borderline. How important is it for an organisation to have very clear parameters about what constitutes harassment?
Organisations have had policies, at least written policies, for many years in the majority of instances. What organisations continue to be quite poor at doing is establishing that clarity around what might be harassment and, just as importantly, what is not harassment. And the way they need to do this is to have meaningful education programs with their staff, which isn't just about ticking the boxes. And I often say this when I'm doing these kinds of sessions or facilitations, I will say to the participants, I'm not going to waste your time talking about the obvious. I'm not going to waste your time talking about the black and the white, because everyone gets the black and the white. It's the grey areas which is causing organisations problems. And that's where I think organisations need to invest a lot more time and a lot more energy. And if they do so, they will find, unsurprisingly, that the number of complaints will actually reduce within their organisation, because there's better clarity on what is and what isn't.
Joydeep, great to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks very much.